We're here at the National Motor Museum at Bewley, home of the Caravan and Motorhome Club collection. This year we're celebrating 80 years since VE Day. And to celebrate the occasion, there is a special new exhibition called Pitch Up and Carry On. It's telling the story of caravanning during the war, the roles that the caravans themselves played, and also the role the club played in facilitating that people were able to carry on caravanning. So having a look around the museum, I think I've found the perfect tow car for the occasion. So let's hop in and go take a closer look. So it's the summer of 1939 and caravanning is on the up, and really it's a decadent hobby for people who are not only wealthy enough to own a car, but wealthy enough to own a caravan as well. And it's sold as this thing that you can escape the hustle and bustle of life to the countryside. And then in the outbreak of war, it suddenly takes on a new meaning that you can literally seek peace from the war. And the club played quite a pivotal role in that, didn't they?
Yes, so in October 1939, when war breaks out, the Caravan Club finds himself realizing that actually people are not going to be holidaying around the countryside, they're not going to go to the coast, and that hobby is going to have to change. So the first thing they did, they reacted very quickly and they started change the price of their wartime subscription, reducing it to allow members to still be able to afford the Caravan Club subscription. And the other thing they did is that they started promoting caravanning as a way to escape the city, but escape in a different meaning than from summer. They started promoting caravanning as a way to find safety.
What I find quite interesting looking into the history of that is that they've shifted from selling the idea of going caravanning to selling it as something you can almost do to sit out the war. And I guess contextually at the time, there was this opinion amongst a lot of people that this would be over really quickly. So why not get a caravan, go to the countryside, wait for it all to blow over? But as you're about to find out, that's not what happened, and things got quite serious quite quickly, and the club had to react to that.
Indeed, so they were trying to sell this idyllic image of go to the countryside and find your little peace heaven for the duration of the war, but actually as 1940 approached and nothing seemed to change, the club saw that so many people were taking up caravanning for the first time as a way to escape the threat of the city and the threat of living along the coast, where the fear of Germany invading was really strong. And all these new people taking up caravannings, they weren't the wealthy people of the early 30s, but they were families that they were just trying to evacuate and stick together.
And I think one of the great things about this exhibition is highlighting one of the people, I guess you could call her a character, Mrs. Fowler, has an incredible story. Please tell me more, because she seems like an amazing woman.
She really was. So she was a vice president of the club from the late 30s up until she passed in the 50s. And she was a very keen caravaner. At one point she owned 4 caravans. Wow. She was obsessed with the color blue, so all her caravans were all painted blue. But one of the most important things about her was that she was a commandant for the Red Cross. So very early after the First World War, she realized that her caravans could actually be converted into mobile first aid stations. So during the war, she really embraced these possibilities. And because she lived in Leamington Spa, so in the Midlands, obviously when the Blitz happened and Coventry was really badly hit, she was one of the first people to respond, to react. And she spends nights on end just going around the city and offering first aid support, not only to people that were hurt during the attacks, but also to the people that provided relief, because she was offering cups of teas, she was offering refreshments, she was offering even just a place to retreat and have a moment of peace and tranquility and step away from the madness of what was happening.
That's what I love with some of the pictures that you've picked out from the collection to feature here, is you've obviously got this really emotive picture of the women in the Red Cross outside one of her caravans, presumably.
Yes, so this is Mrs. Fowler coming out of her caravan, and these are some of the nurses that worked alongside her. And as we can see in this photograph as well, she really decorated her caravans.
I was going to say, if I needed medical assistance, that's a pretty nice place to be looked after.
Yes, indeed. So she really was an extraordinary woman, because this wasn't the only side of helping that she was interested in. She really realized the importance of fundraising for the Red Cross as well.
Which leads us neatly on to possibly my favourite item in this exhibition, which is incredibly one of her original scrapbooks. Please tell me the story behind this, because it has to be seen to be believed.
So this is part of 5 albums that Mrs. Fowler herself compiled, and they are scrapbooks containing photographs, newspaper cuttings, personal letters that she collected throughout her lives. Obviously the albums are blue and they are named after her caravans. So in this album called Blue Caravan number 4, we found these incredible photographs of her dogs. So she had 4, at one point 5, highly trained sheepdogs, miniature sheepdogs, and she used to hand make costumes for them to send them around and collect money for the Red Cross or several other causes. And one of the most extraordinary things is this letter signed by Clementine Churchill, in which she acknowledges the effort of Mrs. Fowler's dogs and thanks her for her support to one of her causes.
That's amazing that she obviously had the initiative early on in the war to help with the war effort in her own way, and the caravans were central to that. And she obviously had to convert her caravans, and presumably after the war she carried on, turned them back into caravans again. And
yes, so she prided herself to have designed this conversion, and she was able to turn her caravans from leisure caravans to Red Cross caravan in half an hour. So she actually carried on her Red Cross activity also after the war, offering support to national rallies for the club and even local events in the Midlands, where she was offering support on the side of the street for big events, for big rallies.
so it wasn't just owners that were contributing to the war effort. We also have the story in the exhibition of the manufacturers who changed their outlook to produce vehicles that were specific to the war effort.
So Eccles was one of the first manufacturers to realize that they had to change their production very quickly from the outbreak of the war. So they immediately started taking up contracts with the government to produce vehicles for the military or for medical purposes, and they this way managed to stay in production all the way until 1945.
It's quite poignant that you've highlighted Eccles, because they are probably the most famous name in caravanning at this point, and they're one of the oldest manufacturers, if not the oldest proprietary manufacturer, founded in 1919. And they've got this enormous factory in Birmingham, which is obviously one of the main places that got bombed during the war. So the fact that they were able to carry on production and make such a huge array of vehicles, I mean, if it needed 2 or 4 wheels, Eccles would make it. And we see everything from things like this post office van to a medical unit, and they made mobile canteens and just anything and everything that was necessary for the war effort. But they weren't the only manufacturer that turned their attention to the war effort, and we've got some examples here of other prominent caravan manufacturers, because the club collection has a huge archive of old magazines, which was actually the main way that the caravan club communicated with their members.
Yes, during the war, the magazine took on a completely new role, because it wasn't just a way for the club to publicize itself, but it was the main point of contact from the club with its members, but also with a new community that was turning to caravanning during the war. So they were sharing advice, they were trying to keep the public up to date with all new government regulations that were put in place during the war. And another interesting feature of the magazine during wartime is the adverts from manufacturers that were, in a way, they were saying, we're really sorry, we're not producing any new caravans, we can't manufacture caravans, but what we're doing now is support the war effort. And the way they were doing it was by highlighting all the different trailers that they were manufacturers, whether they were canteens, ARP units, or this beautiful Ensor adverts that highlights all the different designs that we're working on. All manufacturers tried to promote themselves as people that were active in the war.
So obviously during the war, everything turns to the war effort, and they're producing all these vehicles. And after the war, suddenly everything's changed. Manufacturing's changed, And we're going to end on, I think, possibly the most poignant photo in this exhibit, and certainly one of your favourites. Please tell me more about this, because it's got a fascinating backstory.
Yes, so this photograph, which as you said is one of my favorite in the whole exhibition, is from Berkeley Caravans. So Berkeley Caravan didn't actually exist during the war, but they started their production in the 30s as Schrager Brothers, a company that manufactured furniture in London. During the war, obviously, they escaped from the blitzed city and they moved to Biggleswade, a tiny village slightly north of London. And there, all of a sudden, they realized that as a company, they had the expertise to work on aircraft. So they started doing aircraft repair during the war. And then at the end of the war, all of a sudden, they realized that they had materials and expertise to start producing something completely new. So they started working on caravans. And here we can see that the workers are literally taking apart planes and using the materials to build caravans.
People would know contextually during the war there was the shortage of materials and everyone was donating whatever metal they could to produce the planes. But what's not widely known is that after the war they were recycled again, and we've got one of the uses here. And this is actually interesting because historically this is one of the first caravans that's made out of aluminium, which of course we take for granted now. It's how all caravans are built, but that was a result of the changes in manufacturing during the war.
Another extraordinary thing about this photograph is that it clearly comes from the marketing department, and they were trying to advertise their caravans as car apartments, emphasis on the apartment side of things, because they were trying to advertise their products as a way to respond to the housing crisis. And this was very common because after the war, so many people found themselves without a home to go back to. And so once again, we see new market for caravans and new people taking up caravanning for the first time. But it wasn't until a couple of years later, in 1947, that really caravanning started as a leisure pursuit again. And we can see from this photograph here that people started going back across the Channel to Europe for their holidays.
So actually, all in all, although the war is only 6 years, it's a good 7 or 8 before it resumes again, and the world is never the same. And it's amazing in this exhibition to discover that story, because I don't think until now it's ever actually been pieced together in such a visual way. And there's loads of material here that I've certainly never seen before and that the club holds in its collection. And I think it's just an amazing story of how we had to navigate this difficult period in time and ultimately emerged better off for it, I guess. But yeah, it's fascinating that caravans played an important role throughout the war. I hope you've enjoyed taking a closer look at the new Pitch Up and Carry On exhibition. If you want to see it for yourself, come down to the National Motor Museum at Bewley. If you've enjoyed today's video, please do like and subscribe, and we'll see you again next time.